When you're looking back at TV shows that first aired nearly 40 years ago, it can be quite hard to remember what you thought of them at the time. Luckily for me, I still have this notebook, where I wrote my thoughts on every episode of the 1989 series of Doctor Who. It's interesting to see how my opinions have changed over the years. I gave Battlefield 8 out of 10, which is slightly more than I'll give it now. And I said it was well up to Silver Nemesis standard. So I guess I must have really liked Silver Nemesis. Ghostlight I gave 6 out of 10 and said, this story is as bad as the Happiness Patrol. Too many questions and no answers whatsoever. I guess watching it over 3 weeks must have made it a lot harder to follow. Now, it's one of my favourites. It's got a classic Doctor Who setting, a big old house full of secrets and quirky characters. There's a Neanderthal butler, a mad big game hunter, a creepy housekeeper, a policeman in a drawer, and something locked in the basement. It's a fascinating collection of eccentrics, with mystery piled upon mystery. Into this come the Doctor and Ace. They've started to take on more of a teacher-student relationship now, with him encouraging her to work out for herself where they've landed, like in the hit BBC show Destination X. It turns out to be the same house that Ace would burn down a whole century later, and the Doctor landed there purely to enable her to relive her childhood trauma, whether she likes it or not. And not for the last time this season either. In this case it kind of works out, but the Doctor is really playing with fire here, and if the Doctor had carried on manipulating Ace like this, it would not have ended well, as can be seen in the New Adventures novels. Sylvester McCoy's performance is noticeably different here. He's much quieter and more understated, throwing away lines rather than emphasising them, and it really suits the darker character of the Doctor this season. And Sophie Aldred has some big emotional scenes, reliving this primal trauma that clearly had a big effect on Ace's life, full of righteous anger at the Doctor for bringing her there, but in the end coming out of it feeling a lot more positive. They meet the master of the house, Josiah, and his niece Gwendolyn, who takes Ace to get changed as her outfit is apparently obscene by Victorian standards. She's only got bare shoulders. Imagine if Lilo or Perry were there instead. They'd have had a fit. So they both get changed into men's suits and spend most of part 3 rolling around on top of each other. Okay, maybe the lesbian subtext is a bit more obvious in this one. It turns out there is a spaceship in the cellar, with insects with zombie heads lurking within, plus a raggedy creature called Control, and an angelic being called Light who has godlike powers. But the real villain is Josiah, who's planning to assassinate Queen Victoria and take over the country, in the same way that he's taken over the house from its original occupants. His plans are foiled by Control and Redvis, who unexpectedly become a couple. I guess there is someone for everyone after all. But then Light plans to destroy all life on Earth until the Doctor talks him out of it. So it's quite a simple story really. I don't know why my younger self was so confused. The guest cast is excellent, as we come to expect. Michael Cochrane as Redvis Van Cooper is deliciously bonkers. Sharon Juice as Control is a little hard to understand at times with her really raspy voice, but she makes the transition from savage to ladylike in a few short scenes, and somehow it works. Catherine Schlesinger as Gwendolyn seems to be the most normal member of the household at first, but her madness starts to show more and more as the story goes on, until she eventually goes completely nuts and tries to kill Ace. Luckily she gets one final scene with Sylvia Sims to show what the characters were really like before Josiah turned them into monsters. Also, Frank Reynolds plays the Inspector. He would have been a familiar face at the time, after years playing a policeman in Z-Cars and its spin-offs, so that would have added an extra layer for viewers at the time. This is probably the best script since Caves of Androzani. It's packed full of quotable lines, such as, "I loathe bus stations, terrible places full of lost luggage and lost souls. The cream of Scotland Yard, gone to see a man about a god." It's just beautifully written throughout, and it's no surprise that Mark Platt went on to write some of the best Doctor Who books and audios. Evolution is a prominent theme throughout, from Reverend Matthews voicing his opposition to Darwin's theories, which ends with him devolving into an ape, to Josiah gradually evolving into a Victorian nobleman, and Control going from a bundle of rags to a ladylike. Even Gwendolyn's song is appropriate to the theme. Light's entire worldview leaves him unable to come to terms with evolution, preferring to wipe the planet clean and start again, until the Doctor points out that he has also changed, leaving him to vanish in a puff of logic. The look of the show is also impressive, with a big elaborate set for the house, and sympathetic lighting for a change, so it's noticeably darker and spookier in nighttime scenes. Not everything works. The husks of Josiah's past selves are an unnecessary monster that the show could really have done without, but no matter. So was I right to consider it too complicated? Well, it certainly throws a lot of characters at you in part 1, and subsequent parts bringing control and light with little explanation, and a lot of ideas are only mentioned briefly, so you really have to pay attention to catch them. Perhaps another episode would have given it more room to breathe and made it more accessible, but watching it now with decades more experience of complex narratives, it mostly makes sense. The origins of Control and Josiah could maybe have been made clearer, and all we know of Light is that he's some kind of alien, but that doesn't stop it from being one of the high points of 1980s Doctor Who, proving that the show was still coming up with classic stories right until the end. The DVD has about an hour and a half of special features. There's the full version of Gwendolyn's song as an Easter egg. There's 18 minutes of deleted scenes, which are mainly just extended versions of the originals. There's nothing really essential in there. Writer's Question Time has the writer Mark Plass answering questions at a convention, explaining how the story evolved and what Control and Josiah really are. Plus he talks about how he's influenced by likes of Lewis Carroll, William Blake and Mervyn Peake. Light in Dark Places is a 38-minute making of, without the writer, but with most of the cast. They give their memories of filming, and it sounds like they all had a jolly old time, even if they didn't really understand the script. And Andrew Cartmel, the script editor, tries to explain the plot, not entirely successfully. Plus there's 18 minutes of studio footage with Sylvester, McCoy and Sophie Aldred larking about between takes. Overall, this is the best the show has been in a long time, and probably one of my favourite stories of the entire run. I'll give it 10 out of 10. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed my reviews, you might want to check out my Patreon, where I'm currently reviewing 7th Doctor audio stories every week, plus the latest episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Next week on this channel, The Curse of Fenric. I gave it 9 out of 10 originally, but will it still be one of my favourites? Tune in next week to find out. See you then.